Good afternoon to those of us here in the room and also on Zoom. I am Sarah Buck, filling in for Timo today. So I am here to convene the meeting. Welcome to our 5,638th meeting. And at this time, I welcome Dr. Nunez up to give us the thought of the day.
Good morning. In anticipation to the presentation that we're going to hear about education, I'd like you to think about a thought of a Spanish mystic, Teresa of Avila, who was born in 1515 and preceded 100 years before the Enlightenment. She said, "Let us remember that within us there is a palace of immense magnificence, and we are able to enter that palace of immense magnificence with education." Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. So, just a few announcements before we get going with our program for today. When it comes to questions, after our speaker presents, we will take questions in the room first, and then we'll do our best to get to the Zoom questions. If you do have any questions on Zoom, make sure that you type them into the chat box. We will honor our speakers and our time by keeping our questions succinct, and ideally one question per person. We'll take questions at the end, so we'll let our speaker give his presentation, and then we will hold all of our questions to the end. At this time, is Timo online to do the introduction? Me, I'm doing it. Okay.
I'm right here, Sarah. I'm right here.
He is here.
Right here. You can do the formal introduction. I just want to say, Josh, buddy, I'm sorry I miss you, but thank you for being there.
Welcome, Timo. So I will do the formal introduction. Joshua D. Hale is the president and CEO of Big Shoulders Fund, which invests more than $40 million annually to support its network of 72 schools serving nearly 20,000 students, of whom nearly 80% identify as Black or Hispanic, and 66% reside in low-income households. In addition, as a result of a fully funded charitable donation, Big Shoulders Fund extended its programming in 2019 to 20 schools in Northwest Indiana, reaching an additional 6,000 children. Annual investments are for scholarships and student enrichment, operational support and financial management, academic and professional development programs, leadership development, and an Adopt a School program. In 2020, the organization's leadership announced Big Shoulders Fund Plus, a 10-year, $70 million commitment to undertake local management of 32 of its highest need schools. This program gives principals the opportunity to plan strategically with Big Shoulders Fund to improve operations and ensure the viability of the schools for the benefit of the children and communities they serve. Mr. Hale was a fellow in the Leadership Greater Chicago and an inaugural member of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs Emerging Leaders Program. Mr. Hale serves on the board of directors of the Irish Fellowship Club of Chicago and the Development Committee of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Mr. Hale is a director on the board of Amerigo Education Incorporated and FERS Tech Incorporated. He is a member of the Commercial Club, the Economic Club, the Chicago Commonwealth Club, and the Chicago Club, where he is a member of the House Committee. In 2010, Mr. Hale was a 40 under 40 in Crain's Chicago Business Journal, and in 2022, the same publication included Mr. Hale on their list of Crain's Chicago Business 2022 Notable Leaders in Community Development. Previously, Mr. Hale was on the management team at Cristo Rey Jesuit High School and a consultant with the Hale Group Limited. After graduating from Marquette University, Mr. Hale spent 2 years as a volunteer in the Republic of the Marshall Islands. He resides in Chicago with his wife and their 2 sons. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Joshua Hale.
Well, that's a lot of information. My goodness. I think when people hear the Republic of Marshall Islands, they say, "What did he do to get sent there?" And it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad to be sent there for 2 years. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with the Rotary Club, all you Rotarians, and I want to thank my good friend Timo Reebok, who we met when we were young bucks here, just arriving in the city. And Timo has been a great friend, a great supporter, and always a lot of fun. And I always think, and I always say, he travels to Europe like I go down the block. I don't know how he holds it all up. So Timo, thank you for the invitation, and thanks for all you do for the Rotary Club and for the city of Chicago overall.
Thanks for being there.
I just want to thank Sarah for your kind remarks and for hosting us today at this table. And I also just want to thank 2 of my team members who are here today. John Malloy, who's really ahead of all of our communications, our strategic planning. He works closely with our board of directors and trustees. He's kind of the brain of Big Shoulders Fund and has worked in this mission for a long time. He was at Holy Trinity before. He was at Big Shoulders Fund. And then Carolyn Gibbs Broughton, who is an educator, unlike most of us at Big Shoulders Fund, and actually worked in the field and taught in this mission, but then worked at Big Shoulders for many years. Many of the programs we're going to talk about, she helped build and create. And then she's worked at a number of other leading organizations in the city, like After School Matters, and some charter school networks. But we are thrilled that she came back to Big Shoulders Fund, which we think is home for her and for all of us. So thanks to them for being here today as well, and for putting up with me mostly. And then Tamara, my God, thanks for all your help and coordinating. You do a great job. My goodness, you're on your A game with communication and everything else. So I'm really excited to be here and to share a little bit about our mission. And you know, when Timo first asked me to speak here today, you know, like usual, I responded very quickly. I said, yes, of course, I'd love to speak. I didn't ask what it was about, and I started thinking maybe I should find out what it was about. Does he want me to talk about nuclear energy, or maybe the notes of the recent G20 meeting, or something else? But thankfully, he said, I want you to talk about Big Shoulders Fund. The other things I know nothing about, but Big Shoulders Fund, I've learned a few things. And I'm only too happy to share stories about this mission. And when considering this, you know, talking with John and some others, our team, about speaking here, we thought it made sense to focus our remarks today on relationships, because we really think that's the basis of what Big Shoulders Fund is all about. And it's been the lifeblood of our organization since the founding. And while I cannot call myself a Rotarian, I've been here to a number of meetings and met a number of people who are part of it. I love that the first objective of Rotary is to encourage and foster the development of acquaintance as an opportunity for service. I think it's a great thing to focus on. And you certainly put it better than I could have put it in those words. But that's kind of the same approach we take at Big Shoulders Fund in the work that we do. And I think at my worst moments, if I reflect on my life and work and my daily existence, my worst moments are when I'm puffed up and I focus on me and I think, look what I'm doing, look what we're accomplishing, and feeling, you know, cocky or overconfident. But I'm reminded all too often, certainly by my wife and my kids and others, but that's not what it's about. It's about relationships. And my life has been enriched by the people that I have met, the people that have guided my life, who have shown me the way, but even more, that have opened my eyes to understand different perspectives, to understand different opportunities, or look at things differently. And that's what it's really all about. And that's really about the founding of Big Shoulders Fund. When I think about it, we can go to that next slide. Really, Big Shoulders Fund, and this slide is just a chart that shows kind of our areas of strategic investment, which I'll come back to, but it really started back in 1986. And Cardinal Bernardine was the head of the Archdiocese here in Chicago, and he saw in the Archdiocese one of the greatest treasures was the Catholic schools. And particularly, he saw the mission side of them, schools that were located in neighborhoods, under-resourced neighborhoods, disinvested neighborhoods that were rich in talent, but only needed access to more opportunities. And he saw those schools as certainly a part of the mission of the church, but also incredibly important to the city of Chicago. That if children and families don't see access to a brighter future through education, then the city is lost, our democracy is lost. But he knew that he needed help to raise the funds to keep those schools viable. The archdiocese didn't have those funds. And so he looked to relationships. He looked to friends. He looked to leaders in the business community. And so he went out at first to 4 leaders in the business community: Jim O'Connor, Andy McKenna, Barry Sullivan, Ed Steffen, names you may or may not know, but they were heads of different organizations here in the city. And Bernadine knew them and had a relationship with them. He asked them for their help. And so they started talking about it. And they went out to other friends of theirs and asked for their support. People like Lester Crown and James Compton, and other Ron Gidowitz and other leaders in the city, and said, would you help? And those relationships started to build a web. And ultimately, it led to a group coming together and forming Big Shoulders Fund in 1986 as an independent charitable organization organized to support Catholic schools in neighborhoods where there's a high percent of the students and families living out of below poverty, they're Title I eligible, and ensuring that those schools remain open. And it evolved over time to an organization today that's raised over $500 million and is investing $35 to $40 million each year in these schools. And from those seeds that were planted earlier, it really grew and developed. And I would say that what it's really about is ensuring that children have access to a quality, values-based education in a safe and structured environment, what we'd want for all of our children. And today, coming back from 1986, I'm fast forwarding very quickly to where we are today. We have 92 schools. And Sarah kind of referenced it, that recently we expanded into Northwest Indiana, and it was a grant from a couple who had been involved with the Big Shoulders Fund, but really wanted to focus on kind of Gary and the surrounding areas to ensure that those schools also remain vibrant. And so now we have 92 schools with almost 26,000 children. 80% of those children identify as Black and Latino, and about 65 to 70% are living at or below poverty. So while they may come from under-resourced backgrounds, the talent in these schools, and I'll come back to this later with data and numbers to show that there's enormous talent locked in these schools. And the relationships that Cardinal Bernardine formed created an organization that saw that talent and that the need for opportunities and said, how do we build it? And as I mentioned, we've raised over $500 million. That's only part of the story. The other part of the story is what we developed into. And on this chart up here shows our 4 major areas of investment. I'm just going to touch on these at a high level. The first one is scholarship support and academic enrichment. And at a high level, I think about it as, what would you do for your children? What sort of supports did you wrap around your child? Was it support when they weren't doing well in math, maybe a tutor? Was it test prep when they needed to prepare for a test to get into high school or college? Was it some social emotional counseling when they were going through a rough patch? Was it experiences like going to a summer camp? I mentioned we have Carolyn built some of our programs. We have a program out in Wyoming called Staddle Camp, which is essentially a STEM and leadership camp. We take almost 400 students out there every year, and they go there for a week-long experience. We would all want our children to have experience like that. We want our children to go to museums. We want them to have all the experiences that help them prepare to see new opportunities, to see beyond what's in front of them to what is possible. So scholarship and enrichment is about certainly access, giving them a scholarship, but it's also about wrapping them with supports, all that we would do for our own children. The second area is operational investments. If you look at our 92 schools and you went out and you met these principals, you would meet a group of tremendous heroic leaders that are stringing together nickels to turn them into dollars to keep things moving forward. They are great academic leaders. They are great leaders. But in any one individual, to ask someone to be a great academic leader, to be a great leader of a staff and a team to drive forward, but then on top of that, be great at marketing, to be great at the bookkeeping, to be great at the facilities, that's a lot to ask. So we work close to the principals to help them with those other skills. So whether it's marketing, it's their facilities management, long-term planning, we have people on our team with those skills that go out and sit with the principal and say, let us help you do that. We take on management sometime of their financials. We help with their social media and marketing to parents and community for enrollment, but also for fundraising. So really in the operational side of the schools, we try to support the principal either by helping or by taking on and doing it. The next area is leadership development. And I can tell many of you are in the business sector or in the university sector, and you understand the importance of developing leadership. If I could go back in time and invest in more in this one area, I would do it. And you guys all know it. We have now developed a very strong pipeline from recruiting teachers into our schools. We call it pre-service. So even before they graduate college, we're starting to get in touch with them and trying to inculcate them into joining us at Big Shoulders Fund in one of our schools. When they come in, we have a new teacher program that says you're a new teacher. Over the next 3 years, you're going to have a coach, a mentor that works with you. We're going to support you as you get to know your community, get to know your moving from the theoretical to the practice, and really help you develop. We've seen that increase retention of those early professionals to stay much longer in the field of teaching and in these under-resourced neighborhoods. We then have opportunities along the way for teachers to start to develop leadership in different ways. That might be getting a higher degree, becoming a content area coach for their school or for a group of schools. It may mean being a lead teacher for our Stadel camp in Wyoming. And then we also have a pathway to becoming a principal. We now have an apprenticeship, which we didn't have for many years. So most of the principals, we'd say, boy, you're a good teacher. Why don't you become a principal? There's not a lot of correlation between that unless you've had a chance to kind of observe. So we now have an apprenticeship to the assistant principal, and we have a principal development program that really recognizes meritocracy. And it's kind of like, you may have heard of YPO. It's kind of like that. If you achieve on 6 KPIs, key performance indicators, you get into this program, the Sullivan Fellows program, and you get paid a stipend every year that you're in it, and you get a bonus if you make it over many years. So we have a pipeline of leadership that we developed Big Shoulders Fund to retain great leadership in our schools and our mission, which helps enormously. And the last area is academic programs, which most of the academics on our team get nervous when I've been talking about these things. I am not an academic. I taught for 2 years overseas. It was the hardest job I ever had and loved, but was not very good at it. So I stayed in education, but a different side. But we go out to these professionals who are like all of us that want to continue to grow in their job. We really focus on how do we help bring that classroom to life. So we invest in teachers, in content, in technology, in curriculum, and then connect teachers to help them to grow in their profession. Most of our teachers, when they ask why they stay in the mission or what will keep them in there, you might think pay, you might think recognition or anything else. Invest in me is the number one thing that they say. Invest in me. They want to be invested in. And so that's what our academic programs do. So we've evolved from the early days when Cardinal Bernardine went out to a group of professionals and said, help us start this. And they started raising money for scholarships, which was the primary vehicle in our early days, to these many different programs that we have: scholarship, operational, leadership, development, academic programs. And as Sarah said, we're now managing 32 of our 92 schools, which was a big jump in changing how we interact with the schools. That was a big jump. And it didn't just happen overnight. We evolved over many, many years and listening to the needs of our schools. And it really happened through relationships. And it goes back to that idea of acquaintances and relationships, that through those connections, we grow and develop. And if I think about the relationships that change the organization, I often think the first group I think of is, of course, our supporters, our board members, our donors. Ken Caniglia has been involved on our Chairman's Advisory Council for years and has helped us to think about our work differently. Timo Reebok as well, and many people on our board. Those relationships help us to think differently. People ask questions. They go out to the mission. But really, the impact I think the Big Shoulders Fund is really best at is the connection between those supporters, our board members, our donors, our volunteers, and these school communities. Often those paths wouldn't cross. Not often that Ken and I might say, hey, let's go down to this neighborhood, that neighborhood on the southwest side. Because what reason we have if we don't have relationships? But once you meet a teacher, you meet a student, you meet a community, all of a sudden you say, I want to get out there. And what we have seen is that those relationships have helped us to grow. And I think a hallmark of our program is listening. I don't ever think, and no one on our team ever thinks, that we're going to go out to these schools and tell them this is the answer. We listen to their needs. I need help with marketing. I need help keeping the books. I need help investing in my teachers. And we respond. That it's those relationships over time that have helped us to go. And as you all know, Chicago is a big city, but it's a little town. And it's one of the greatest things about it. And that often we all find that we are much more connected than not, connected in lots of different ways. And I love Chicago. I am from Boston originally, but I moved here and became a Chicagoan about 25 years ago. And what I love here is the uniqueness of each neighborhood, the rich diversity and tapestry of each of those communities that come together. And the common thing that we have across all these neighborhoods is a strong belief that the future is about our children, and investing in our children is how we're all going to have a brighter future. And what we want for our children in my neighborhood is the same as any other neighborhood across the city. And sometimes, and I know our city has challenges. I'm not sugarcoating anything. I know we have challenges in this city, but I sometimes get frustrated by watching the news and the stories of all the challenges that we face, and they're real, and there are many of them. But I also think it makes us maybe scared or nervous about exploring those communities and thinking, and not always remembering all the wonderful parts of those communities. And when you go out to those different neighborhoods and you build a relationship, you start to see that these are hardworking folk like all of us that want nothing different for their children. And we had to find a way to move beyond that. One of my favorite days of the year, and you might think, well, is it Thanksgiving? Is it maybe Christmas? Maybe it's Halloween, my birthday. Okay, those are all pretty good ones. But my favorite day really is Lend a Shoulder Day. And Lend a Shoulder Day is a day we host at Big Shoulders Fund where there's no other purpose for the day but to build relationships. That's the entire purpose of it. There's no fundraising. There's no lots of big production. There's nothing. It is about building relationships. And it started about 23, 24 years ago. Ken Caniglia can vouch for me. He's been in this many times. Timo has as well. And it really is a day, we just had it last week, so it's a little bit fresh in my memory, where we essentially, people from the business and civic community come together and we all go out to a group of our schools, anywhere from 10 to 15 of our schools, open their doors, invite a group of people in. And so you might be with 5 or 10 other professionals from the business and civic community here in downtown, going out to all parts of the city. And they go into the school and they're greeted by the principal and some of the teachers, and they might do science experiments. They might do a reading project. It might be, frankly, some of these you can see there's people they're sitting crisscross on the ground and chasing little preschoolers around playing Duck, Duck, Goose or other games. But it's essentially to go out and build relationships. And I just had breakfast with a woman this morning who was at our Lend a Shoulder Day. And she said, I'd never been in that neighborhood. And I had a chance to meet so many parents and so many students and so many people in that community. She's like, I'm going to go out to dinner there this weekend. I loved it. And it just was a breaking down of a barrier that didn't have to be there. And I get why. But it also is about building relationships. It's about these connections. And you can see this is us at Tolton Academy down in the Park Manor neighborhood, the far south side, just last week. I love these pictures because it is about building relationships. It's about acquaintances that lead to service. What the Rotary Club is all about, what you guys have been doing for longer than just about any other organization. But it gives you a sense of the joy and everything else when you look at some of these pictures. I just want to make sure that everybody knows there's pictures of students and volunteers and teachers that went out to our schools on each one of these slides. And you can see there's lots of smiles as well. And sometimes having a bad day, things aren't going right at work or challenges. Going out to a school always lifts my spirits. And so I invite any of you guys to come and visit one of our schools at any time. We call these schools beacons of hope. And, many of these schools have been around for 100 years or more in their mission in their neighborhoods. And they change as the neighborhood has changed. But they're beacons of hope because they're in neighborhoods that are too often disinvested or kind of not remembered or have different challenges. And the Beacons of Hope also stems from a research study. Not too long ago, there was a book written about this, so you can look it up. But I'm going to summarize at a very high level. There's a book looked at Big Shoulder Fund schools and what happens when they remain open or when they close. And what the study found, it was done by 2 professors from Notre Dame, a law professor and an economist. And what it found was essentially when a Big Shoulder Fund school closed, social cohesion went down. Social cohesion, I just love saying that word. It sounds very academic. Social cohesion is good behavior, voting, no broken windows, lower crime, community activity. And when they remain open, social cohesion goes up. There was a correlation, statistically significant correlation to that school. And I think you could probably do that study on a lot of community-based organizations. If you're in a neighborhood where the school closes, a library closes, the local store closes, you're probably going to see a lot of things change, not for the good. And so it's kind of maybe obvious, but it does speak to these schools in their longevity. When they do close, it matters in the neighborhood. There's more broken windows. There's less good activity. And so these schools also are opening their doors and feeding these children every day. They're working with parents to help them find jobs. They're working to build community, and they also teach these children and give them a great education. And sometimes we're given a hard time, Big Shoulders Fund, for working so hard to keep these schools open. Sometimes when they really face a challenging time. But if you look over the last decade, we really haven't had any schools close at Big Shoulders Fund. And if you look nationally, the story is much different. We're very proud of that. And also in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen our enrollment grow up 10%, that more and more parents and guardians are saying, this is a school community that I want for my child. But these relationships that I was referencing before, between those interested in improving, volunteers, all of you that are involved in different things, that ultimately help us to be stronger. So let me just give you an example. When I thought about relationships over time and that have made an impact, not just I got to meet someone, but someone getting involved and actually making a difference in the organization. There's a few pictures and maybe some ideas as you think about involvement, because I know you guys are all super involved already. But some of the ways that people have helped us, a number of years ago, someone came to us and said, hey, can we do a service day with you? We had never done a service day. You can see in this picture here, it's with KPMG. This is one that's not too long ago. But if you went back 15 years ago and you asked Big Shoulders Fund, do you do any service days? You would hear, no, we don't. We don't do any service days. Someone came to us and said, we'd like to do a service day with you. Can you set that up for us? And it started with 1, and then it was 2, and then we had 10 a year. Now we have like 150 service days a year. Corporations, groups like Rotary Club, alumni groups, families, large families. And sometimes our auxiliary board and CAC, Ken Knigley and Timo can tell you, they're groups that they're involved in Big Shoulders Fund, host service days every other month, where 150, 200 people come out and show up at 2 or 3 schools. We actually measure that impact in custodial hours now, because they're doing jobs that otherwise we'd have to hire a lot of people to do that would be very expensive and we couldn't do. They paint walls, they clean, they plant. And sometimes they do things with children like reading and other projects. Enormous help. But that started with one person asking, have you ever thought about doing this? And now we have 150 of them or more a year. Another one that came to us through a relationship. This is a guy that's, the pictures of Charlie Babrinskoy. He's, I don't know if any of you know him, he's at Ariel Capital, which is one of the largest minority-owned asset management firms in the country. And he's been involved in Big Shoulders Fund a long time. When I first started Big Shoulders Fund a long time ago, like 17, almost 18 years ago, I went out and I heard about this guy, Charlie Babrinskoy, and he told me, I teach a stock market program at one of the schools. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. He said, well, I know that there's a gap in financial literacy and that under-resourced communities typically have lower savings and less investments. I want to do something about it. So he went out and did it. He created his own curriculum. He went to a school. I was at Big Shoulders Fund for 2 years. I heard about it and I thought, well, that's kind of cute. This guy goes out and teaches a stock market program. How much of a difference could you make doing that? Show you how dumb I am. This program now has grown since that time, where Ken Knigley is actually one of the teachers. We have now in every one of our 92 schools, we have a professional or group of professionals that go in once a month and teach the stock market program. Now, the stock market program is kind of an introductory. It's really about financial savings and long-term planning. And the stock market is kind of a game side to get kids involved, but it's about financial literacy. And it started with one guy, and now hundreds of people go out every month to teach this program in our class. It's unbelievable. That's from one relationship that now is, we're now expanding it into high schools as well. In that program, frankly, I go into it and sometimes I learn something. I need to do more of those financial literacy classes. One relationship that spawned. I just think sometimes I was the one that overlooked it. I thought, what could this possibly do? Thank God smarter people saw the benefit. The next slide is actually another program that grew through relationships. This is actually Linhard Steff, who's a Rotarian as well. He's good friends, I think, with Timo, and I think with Ken as well. He's been involved with Big Shoulders Fund. But years ago, we didn't have any mentors. We had scholarship programs and kind of help provide financial assistance. And someone said, why don't we have some mentors? And really started with Bob Gallagher, the founder of Gallagher Insurance, the guy that built it into what it is today. And he started with him connecting employees of his with students. One mentor for every 5 students. We now have over 5,000 children on scholarship, and almost all those children have mentors working with them. And What's amazing is to see is a richness of relationships developed. Bill Lynch, one of our founding board members, who is the former CEO of Leo Burnett, he still talks about his favorite part of being involved with Big Shoulders Fund is the kids that he's still in touch with that he started mentoring like 20 some odd years ago. And he's now been through groups of students. My wife was a mentor for a group of students, 5th grade, she got to know them. I tried to be involved, and she said, listen, you stick to what you do, I'm gonna stick with this. You'll be a bad influence to these kids. Her students now graduated college. She started another group that are now in high school. And it just, the relationships that are born out of that. We've got to know their families. I was going to cheerleading contests for some of these kids and different things on weekends. But it's amazing, those relationships, how they spawn and they develop. Some of them now hired them into their companies or their firms. I'll start with one person saying, why don't we? And the relationships that develop because of that. Acquaintances in the parlance of Rotary. And then the next one is another opportunity, and this is also an invitation. One of the areas that we've seen, and it's been talked about nationally, is in Big Shoulders Fund would be guilty of it in a good way and not such a good way, that the drive to get kids into college is a big deal in the country. College is a pathway. And so much so that we probably stopped thinking about all the other pathways for students to find careers and pathways to brighter futures. And incentives matter. We were always graded by how many kids you got into college. But there's so many pathways now, technology, the trades, medical field, for students to find their way into. So we have started a couple different programs. One is a Southeast Side Incubator program, where kids are going out and working in real jobs in a high school at St. Francis of Sales, one of our high schools in the East Side. And we also have a program where we're bringing in people from different career tracks to talk about it. If you want to come in to one of our classes to talk to students at your career day, we'd love for you to come in. A chance for these students to build relationships with you, but also them to learn about different pathways. All from relationships, these things started. And these relationships not only enrich the supporters' lives by filling our souls by doing this, but help students to find their pathways. I am always reminded of the weight of our program, that every day we have 92 schools that open their doors to 26,000 students that walk through there with the expectation that we're going to help them find pathways to brighter futures. That means we have to keep looking at our relationships and how do we think about doing this better and more impactfully over time. We have more than 5,000 children, as I mentioned, on scholarships that all need mentors, that all need career help, stock market program teachers, and all sorts of things. And so we are always looking for new relationships. But as I mentioned at the beginning, I guess one of the things I want to leave you with is that at the end of the day is, are we actually making an impact through all this activity, all these relationships, all these partnerships, all these efforts to get volunteers out and teach this and do that and help support teachers and marketing? Does it make an impact? And one of the things is to look at the data and understand the difference. And so there's a slide here with a lot of data on it. And just at a high level, what it looks at is long-term outcomes for students that have been in Big Shoulder Fund schools. In the end of the day, if we're not delivering on that, then we shouldn't be promising anything to the students or to anybody else that's involved in our mission. The good news is the story is very positive. At a high level, we see 95% of our students graduate high school. We also see our students going into college at a very high rate. So not only, everybody talks about 100% are accepted, but how many actually show up? We see about 86% of our students who are accepted actually enroll in college the year following high school graduation, and they persist at about 88 to 90% into their sophomore year and beyond. We see that our alumni graduate college at 2 times the national rate, and for our Black alumni at 3 times the national rate, and for our Latino community at 4 times the national rate. So those are pretty good numbers in terms of, are they finding pathways? The other numbers I would point to would be almost more important. That at the end of the day, we also talk about a quality values-based education, that they go out and become great citizens of the world that we always knew they could be when we first got to know them. And what we see, and this is third-party data, not just us saying we think, and we measure it against, that our students are voting, they're employed, they are volunteering and giving back to organizations, all at rates higher than their peers. So they're actually doing what we always knew they were going to do, that they are great citizens. They're our neighbors. 85% or so of them live in Chicagoland region. Almost 65% of them live in Chicago. So when we talk about investing in these students, we're really investing in our own future. That these are our neighbors. These are people that we're getting to know over time and will enrich because they are employed. They are voting. They are volunteering. They are donating back, just like we would want all members of society to do. I'm sure like many in the Rotary Club, that acquaintances that they developed over time with their parents and guardians, with their mentors, with their teachers, that along the way they picked up that being a great citizen means being involved with places like Rotary, being involved with places where you develop acquaintances that make our city a better place for all of us to live. And so a Big Shoulders Fund, we hope that we are adding to that big city, small town, relationship building, acquaintance building, that makes us all better in the long term. So I thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I may have gone over, so may shut this thing down too. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions in the room? Yes, Marshall, there's a microphone there. Tamara has it.
So I have two questions. One is a personal question for you. You obviously have a lot of energy and a commitment to the city. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you came to Big Shoulders.
Sure. So the short version. So I am originally from the Boston area, and I had gone to school at Marquette, and I was over 2 years in the Marshall Islands. How I was there was with the Jesuits as a volunteer. And I came back from that, and I went to work for a boutique consulting firm. And I thought that was going to be my life and live in Boston. But I got a call from a Jesuit friend, and he gave me a hard time about what I was doing, what I was not doing. And he said, there's this new startup high school called Cristo Rey Jesuit High School here in Chicago. And so, it sounded kind of interesting. I came out and I fell in love with it. I thought, all right, I'll do this for 2 years. Then I'll go back to business school and go back to consulting. And then I came out to Cristo Rey. I fell in love with the mission. I fell in love with Chicago. I ended up staying at Cristo Rey for 5 years, and we started opening up schools. And then I met a young woman through work in a roundabout sort of a way. And then I was thinking, what am I going to do? And next thing, I started looking again at going back to business school because I had no money. I couldn't afford a ring. And someone said, why don't you think about Big Shoulders Fund? And I literally kind of fell into it. I knew the organization. I didn't think I had a shot in Kingdom Come of getting the job. And I got lucky. They hired me, and they were looking at kind of changing the way it was operating. And I jumped. And so now, I guess, whatever it is, 25 years later, Chicago, and we live on the north side of the city, my wife and I, we have 2 boys, and so I love it here. Absolutely love the city.
The other question I have is how can we establish a better connection with the Rotary Club to provide volunteers for what you do? It seems like there are a lot of opportunities for business leaders in town to participate on a volunteer basis, and that's what we do, and we're always looking. Sarah's always looking for volunteer opportunities for our members. So how can we make that a better connection?
I got music to my ears. We would love to. We have a team that focuses on volunteerism, and just say the word. And what we always say is, we will help create your adventure. We are flexible to a fault and find a way to make it work. But we have everything from kind of short-term, 1 day, 1 time volunteering opportunities to long-term. Like the mentoring, the stock market. Ken and Timo would be great ambassadors as well, but we could share materials. But we are always looking for volunteers to come in as speakers on career days, to be mentors, to teach. We actually, since the stock market program started, those relationships, and now we have an entrepreneurship program where professionals go out and work with the students on developing a business and help coach them through that process. It's very similar to the stock market. And we're just starting one up as a lawyer in the legal sphere as well. We have a group of lawyers who are coming together to say they want to kind of introduce that to students as well. So there are endless opportunities, but we would love to create, given that this is what you guys do and do so well. Does that mean?
Thank you.
Yes.
This is going to be a tough one, Ken.
Josh, thanks for all you do with the Big Shoulders Fund. Your impact is felt far and wide. Are there any government programs where one can do well by doing good and contribute money to get some special tax benefits? And
yes, my God, I'm going to be in trouble with Carolyn for not saying this. I totally forgot. Ken?
And what's the expiration date of that program this year? Because we're approaching the giving season, and I think there might be a tight deadline.
There is. Ken, thank you a million for saying that. I added my notes to mention that. So there's about almost 6 years ago, a program was enacted in the state of Illinois called the Invest in Kids Act, which is a tax credit scholarship program. So we all pay taxes in the state of Illinois. And in this program, you are allowed to take your taxes and direct them to an SGO, which is a scholarship granting organization. Happily, Big Shoulders Fund has been a scholarship granting organization since about 1986 when we were founded. But we have a traditional scholarship program, which has always existed, and we now have this tax credit scholarship program. So every year, I happily go on to the My Tax Illinois site, reserve a tax credit, and tell the state of Illinois I'm going to pay my taxes to Big Shoulders Fund. And I send them over to Big Shoulders Fund, and then those are given in scholarships to thousands of children across Chicago. And frankly, you can do it across state. And you as a donor can designate them to a specific school, a group of schools. So like when I do mine, I just say the Big Shoulder Fund schools. But Carolyn went to Fenwick, she could direct it there, or she could direct it to a school she got to know in Inglewood, Academy St. Benedict. You can direct it wherever you go, wherever you want to direct it. And there's you get a 75% tax credit, which is a pretty healthy tax credit. And you get the benefit of knowing your taxes going directly toward helping children access these schools. We have a wait list for this program of like 11,000, 9,000 children on the wait list. So when the students apply for this, every year there's an opening date by mandated law. Within the first 5 minutes, there's thousands of applicants. That speaks to the parents and guardians who want this desperately for their children, to have access to a high quality education for their children, prepares them for the future. And so if you want to take part in that, the deadline is by December 31st. It renews every year. And we're fighting, this program was enacted with a 5-year sunset. We are fighting to keep it going. And we think that we're going to get there, that it's going to continue. But this year, you can reserve a tax credit. Carolyn is actually an expert on this. So if you want to find out more about it, talk to her now to get her number. But essentially, we all pay your taxes. It's nothing additional other than you get 75% tax credit for donating it. And you can help thousands of children get access to a quality, values-based education at our schools or any number of schools. Thanks, Ken, very much. Ken's one of our most generous donors to this program, so you can ask Ken as well.
Thanks. So for time reasons, we're going to move forward, but perhaps if you have time, well, I'm going to take one question from the Zoom. But for anyone in the room who still has a question, if you have a minute after the meeting, perhaps they can speak with you. But I'm going to call on Timo, who has a question.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yes, boss.
Keep it short, Timo.
Yes, I'll try. I'm a wordy guy. Hey, buddy, good to see you. Thank you for being there. Appreciate it. So most clubs and associations, organizations in Chicago struggle with the next generation membership. I know that the Big Shoulders Fund has been cultivated and grown on the shoulders of very successful senior businessmen who stuck together. And I know that you do a great job of getting the 40-year-olds to buy in. How do you fare with respect to the super next generation, the 25 to 30-year-olds who will have the money to throw at this and the time? What's your approach?
It's a great question, and I'm going to brag about it because I had nothing to do with this. A woman on our team, Amy Drozda, leads all these efforts and has worked for years at building kind of the next generation. So when I first started Big Shoulders Fund, Amy started right behind me, and we had a board of directors, our executive committee, and since then we have created, Amy and her team have created the Chairman's Advisory Council, which Timo and Ken helped to build really from the beginning. Now has hundreds of members of successful professionals like them who are active in the mission. And they actually, I'm always amazed, they measure their impact every year about how many are volunteering, how many are donating, and really engage the mission. And just, under that in terms of age, we have an auxiliary board, which I always think of as just graduating college to maybe when you're not going to happy hours anymore, maybe you're settling down at a different stage of life with a partner or a spouse, having children. That's our auxiliary board age. And then our CAC would be kind of mid-career and up. So the auxiliary board would be one, and that they're very active, and how they're involved is different. And then we now have, because we keep talking about, getting next year, we have a teen board. So we have high school age students who are active in our mission as well. They do fundraisers as well. Their fundraiser was, I don't even know what you call it, those bikes, stationary bikes you ride. They go do that for an hour. I was like, I'm not doing that fundraiser. I'll fall over sideways, my God. But they raise funds, they raise, they collect school supplies, they give them out at the beginning of the year. So we've started to get that young group in, which usually gets their parents involved as well. I keep saying, my God, we're gonna get people when they're born and say, get involved, Big Shoulders Fund. But we keep going back to try to get more and more involved. But I would say, Timo, the one thing we learned is, at first we thought we just have a group, but you really have to, the ideas and relationships that develop, that those groups, and you saw the CAC want to do more and more. So we try to make sure that we appropriately staff and support all those relationships and ideas, because they've led to some of our greatest programs over time.
Thank you. And Sarah, there's one question from Uganda. You may want to address that. Or Kandano, can you ask a question directly?
Yes, thank you very much, Timo, for that. Yes, I'm Eric from Uganda. I'm a Rotary actor. And really, the Big Shoulder Fund has really got my attention. I wanted to ask, do you have any branch within Uganda?
Any, what was it? A branch? No, if you're willing to, we'd love to come over to Uganda and open a branch. That sounds fantastic. We don't have one over there, but there's there's a group, it's not gonna sound crazy, there's a foundation we work with called Porticus, which is, they're like the Walmarts of Europe. And they have offices around the world and have philanthropy around the world. And I'm on this group, they call it Global Learning Community. And we do Zoom calls every month. They're super early because it's like all the time changes around the world. But there are a number of groups from Uganda and from Africa in general that are on those calls as well. Different organizations that are focused on improving academic and career training for children. And so I'm sure through someone here I get in touch and I can tell you about some of the organizations. I don't know them very well, but that kind of a small world example. But it's called, if you go on the website, Porticus, Porticus, they have a website that gives we're on there, a number of organizations.
All right, thank you for all of your attention and questions. So, sir, I have a gift for you. You ran away. I know you want that food, but we have a gift for you in exchange for presenting to us today. We have a nice coffee mug for you with our Rotary logo on it. So please have one on us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you for your time.
Making a difference. Thanks very much. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So next on our agenda, we have a new member induction. So if you would like to come up here so we can all stare at you for a while. Okay, so we are inducting today, and I hope I say this right. Please correct me if it's wrong.
You'll always say it right.
Not if it's wrong. So it's Amit?
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
Dada?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, because close enough is not okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I have an oath here to read to you as part of your induction, and then you get pinned, as we discussed.
Perfect.
Okay. Rotary is an organization of business and professional people pledged to upholding the highest professional standards. Rotarians believe that worldwide fellowship and international peace can be achieved when business people unite under the banner of service. You have been chosen for membership in the Rotary Club of Chicago because your fellow Rotarians believe you to be a leader in your profession and because you manifest the intelligence and commitment of heart that fit you to interpret and impart the message of Rotary. You are a representative of your profession in this club, and any information of an educational value pertaining to that profession must naturally come to us through you. It is my great pleasure on behalf of the Board of Directors and members of the Rotary Club of Chicago to welcome you as a member of Rotary One. We welcome you not only for the fine fellowship that we shall share, but also for your talents, abilities, and enthusiasm that will help us to carry out our many projects to make our community, our country, and the world a better place in which to live. Rotary is not a political organization, but all Rotarians are vitally concerned with everything pertaining to good citizenship and the election of good men and women to public office. Rotary is not a charitable organization, yet its activities exemplify the charity and the sacrifices that one should expect from people who believe that they have a responsibility to help others. Rotary is not a religious organization, but it is built on those eternal principles that have served as a moral compass for people throughout the ages. At the same time, you become an ambassador from us to your profession, and we rely on you to carry the principles and ideals of service, which we here inspire, to those who share your professional activity. The community will know and judge Rotary by your embodiment of it in character and service, and we accept you as a member because we know our principles and organization will be safe in your keeping. We also expect you to give us the inspiration that will help us to become better Rotarians. And it is with this hope that I ask the president of the Rotary Club of Chicago, which is Timo, I'm gonna stand in for Timo today, to invest you with the distinguishing pin of a Rotarian and gladly offer you the right hand of Rotary Fellowship. So as promised, here is your official pin.
Perfect.
Where would you like it?
Maybe just here
In
doesn't
the-
work, or
on your
sweater,
collar?
on sweater's fine.
Sweater's okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Here you go, you're
Thank you.
officially pinned. Thank you very much. So if you want to just take literally 1 minute to share with us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And then
Yeah,
I'll give you the
yeah,
hook.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and thank you to Rotary One for accepting me as a new member. So I'm Amit. Most of you already know me, I think. I've attending the meetings for quite a while now. As some of you might notice, I have a very nice, lovely accent. So that's my German side. I was born and brought up in Düsseldorf in Germany and moved to Chicago by the end of last year, together with my wife and now 2 children. So we have a son who is 20 months old and a daughter who is just 3.5 months old, which is why I look as tired as I am, but still in a good mood. And yeah, I mean, I thank you, Sarah, and I thank Timo, who introduced me also to Rotary. It's just an unfortunate coincidence and not good planning that he is not in town while I have here my new membership ceremony. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working and meeting all of you over the next couple of years and from there on. Thank you very much.
Great, welcome. Although again, when I sat next to him and I said, you're a new member, I don't understand. I've seen you here at every meeting. So, okay, so moving forward then to introductions. Do we have any in the room visiting international Rotarians in the room? Do we have any in the room visiting US Rotarians? Yes, Tamara will give the microphone to you.
Hi, I'm Doug Griffin, and I apologize for being late. I swear the sign in the elevator says 12:30. And so anyway, I would have come earlier just to eat. Anyway, I'm from Evergreen, Colorado, about 30 miles west of Denver. And we have a club of about 105, 110 members. And we've been fortunate. I was going to ask you about spinning off. We've spun off 5 clubs up there in the nearby foothills area. I used to live in Evanston for a long time, and I used to work across the street at the old Continental Illinois Bank and eventually Bank of America. But about the time you arrived in town, I left to move to Colorado and took my first retirement. But anyway, thank you for allowing me to attend. You all look wonderful, and it sounds like you're going to be doing some great things.
But thank you for being here. Do we have in the room any guests of Rotary? Any guests? Marshall? Oh, another visiting. Oh, we missed one. I'm sorry. Hold on, Marshall.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kia Rowbottom. I am unsure whether or not I'm visiting because now I've relocated back to the greater Chicagoland area. I am looking to be a prospective member here, so hopefully I'll be joining very soon. I love everything. I've been wanting to come and visit. I've talked to Tamara, and I think it's very exciting. I was a member of Rotary number 12 from New Orleans, and now hopefully a member of 1. Thank you so much.
Great, welcome.
So I have 2 guests today, Celie Shankman, who's from Memphis. She is relocating to Chicago. We're trying to get her into the Rotaract Club. And Michelle Collins, who's a longtime Chicagoan. So
Great, welcome. Thank you for being here. Anyone else in the room that I might have missed? Okay, so we'll turn online then. It looks like we have a visiting international Rotarian who's still online. If you are a visiting international Rotarian, please feel free to unmute and speak.
Don, that's your chance.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm by name Eric Kinyara Chendano, and I'm basically actually not a Rotarian, but I'm a Rotaractor from Uganda, from District 9213. And I just got the link and I joined, and I've really enjoyed the fellowship that we have had, and I'm looking forward to the others that are coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today. Do we have any other visiting international or visiting US Rotarians online? You'd like to say hello? Going once? Sold. Okay, so are there any guests of Rotary online? Okay, well, welcome to all of our guests who have joined us today. Moving on to some volunteer opportunities. Again, I want to plug the Thanksgiving Dinner Service Project, the first of which is tomorrow. So we have one tomorrow and then one next Wednesday as well. I talked about this at last week's meeting. So you can still register through the gyrator or through the calendar. Tomorrow and next Wednesday, we are looking for volunteers to help prepare a Thanksgiving dinner. And this is happening from 2 to 5. Well, the shifts are happening between 2 and 5 or 4:30 to 7:30, or really any time that you're available. The location is at the Cornerstone Center LaSalle Street Church in the 1100 block of North Wells. So you can still sign up. You'll be helping Alita prep meals in the afternoon, and then in the early to later evening, we'll be delivering those meals as well. And it's just around the corner from where the meals are being prepped. So please, if you're interested and available, we are looking for some hands-on opportunities there. And then also, Wes, would you like to come up and plug the dictionary project?
I think I can do it from here.
Okay.
Dictionary.
Hang on one second so he can give you the mic so our Zoomers can hear.
Brian, thank you. I want to thank Neetha for signing up to volunteer for the dictionary project. I'm looking forward to hearing from more of you. We have a lot of dictionaries in a lot of schools. It's on the website, or if you prefer, you can email or call me. Any questions? It's really going to go on probably through the end of January, maybe a bit longer. We have a lot of dictionaries to hand out.
We do.
And there are a lot of public school kids, so it kind of corresponds. It's a wonderful, fun activity because you go in the classrooms, you get to meet third graders. And if you hit the right classroom, you really should pack a lunch because they will ask you questions until you collapse. Yeah, Ted just asked, can we go in the spring? Also, certainly, in case you don't complete it or whatever. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you. So several opportunities to get your hands dirty with some volunteer opportunities. So much of what I discussed today in terms of opportunities and what I'll soon mention here about meetings you can find in the gyrator and on the club website. We're also always interested in member minutes. And so if you have any news or photographs that you would like to spotlight, make sure you send those to the office. We might bring you up here to the microphone to shine the spotlight on you up here as well. So we're always looking for news from you to share. Speaking of sharing, you have piggy banks on your tables, and all of those are for the donations. And these donations will go to the Rotary One Foundation. And it should be noted that the donations that end up in those piggy banks get matched by two of our members, one of them being Timo and the other one being Bob Westrop. So if you are able to place some money into those piggy banks or whatever they are, elephant banks on your table, please do so. Upcoming meetings, again, you can look in the gyrator or look on the calendar, but upcoming meetings include, dramatic pause. Is there another slide? I only know when the committee service meeting is. I don't know when the other ones are. Okay, here we go. All right, so we'll do this one first. These are upcoming Rotary One meetings. So we always have our Rotary One roundtable on Fridays. Those are basically drop-in meetings. You can come to socialize for fellowship. Next Tuesday, we have the Service Above Self. The Rotary One celebrates the season of giving. That'll be both here in person and on Zoom. The following Tuesday, we've got Ron Romero and Randy King with the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66, also a hybrid type meeting. And then the Rotary After Work, we'll have to wait and see, but that is an in-person only meeting. For those who may not know, we have one meeting per month that is in the evenings. That's the first Tuesday of each month. So you can see that'll be on December 6th. Here are your dates for the upcoming committee meetings for PR and marketing, community service, international service, the DEI, and then the membership committee as well. Pancho, you had a hand, yes. Hang on one second, he'll give you the mic.
On behalf of Walter Stawicki and I, we're looking for people to give us a thought of the day. Please don't contact me now. I don't want to embarrass anyone, but you can contact either Walter or I if you're interested in doing it next week and thereafter. Thank you.
Marshall.
Mark and I also wanted to announce the nominating committee is in the process of selecting our leadership for next year. So anyone who has suggestions about officers and directors who would make good candidates, please contact one of us and let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other announcements?
Well, we need to fill 4 positions in the board of directors and of course, a new president after Sarah.
Okay, thank you for that. So with that, just for time's sake, I'll lead us through the 4-way test. So if you would all rise. So this is the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And with that, I bring another wonderful meeting to a close. Thank you very much.